I just pulled up Geoff's slides. He's got 73 slides. Cool. Here you go.
Cool.
So get clicking.
73 slides, 10 minutes, right? G'day. Hi all, and thanks for having me here this morning. You know, I used to kind of question whether I was kind of reckless, foolhardy, or just incredibly stupid. And I think after last night playing with loaded shotguns, I'm going for the latter. Incredibly stupid. And it's not just playing with loaded guns. I do online banking. And I'm an idiot. And if you do it, you're one too. This is what my bank looks like when I go to it. I type in the URL and up comes that screen. Yep. When you go to your bank, you type in some URL and up comes a screen. How easy is it to do that screen? I'm like, shit, you do a screen snap, paste it back. Anyone can do it. So I have no idea, realistically, that that's my bank. But it looks familiar, so I type in a username and a password. Yep, so do you. So how do I know I'm just not giving it all away? How do you know you're not giving it all away? What tells you the difference between your bank and someone wanting your money, right? Do you ever ask that question, or are you just as stupid as me? I'm like, do you ever wonder about this? Well, you know, of course, what you're looking for, aren't you, is the little green bit. What does the little green bit mean? EV. What does EV mean? It means they've paid someone money. Some folk that I've never really met have paid some other folk that I've never really met some money, and bits of my browser go green and I'm meant to feel reassured, right? I'm like, shit, I might as well colour it purple for all it's good. You know, why do you think this is any good? So I'm getting a bit curious. So I really want to understand how and what's going on with that. What is that green thing? And how do I know, particularly as I'm doing this over Wi-Fi, because not only am I stupid, I'm demented. How do I know that the password that I typed in isn't being snaffed by the lot of you? Well, theoretically, it's all encrypted. How do I know it's encrypted? It's got a padlock. I'm like, shit, am I credible? Am I just insanely stupid? I'm going for the latter. So anyway, here's my little bit of green and what's going on. Well, if I actually turn on a while snooper, what I'll find is that I send off a query to the DNS. And after a while, there comes an answer. 104.97.235.12. Obviously, that's the Commonwealth Bank, right? So obviously, my browser thinks that, because the next thing it does is open up a TCP session. So I've typed in a URL and the domain name's been resolved into an IP address, and my machine is connected to that IP address, and I get that wonderful page, right? That address, 104.97.235.12. Familiar to anyone? Well, it should be familiar to the guy from Akamai, because it's his bloody address. No, I didn't know I banked with the Bank of Akamai. You know, I really didn't. And I have no idea which customer has that splash screen, and I'm just hoping it's my bank. Because, quite frankly, the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, my bank, has a completely different set of IP addresses, and it's not that one. It's not that one. So, why does my browser think that some clown using Akamai is my bank? It's a really good question, because that's my money. And you should be asking the same from your provider, because that's your money too, right? And so the answer is, it's all about cryptography, yes? Because there are secrets being exchanged between, well, Akamai, my bank, and my browser that theoretically prove this relationship. Now, this is all about public and private key cryptography. And the idea is, unlike other forms of cryptography which are symmetric, this is asymmetric. You have two keys. Messages encrypted with one can only be decrypted with the other. And it works both ways. So the theory is, I keep one a very, very good secret, and the other one I actually post out on the wall outside. It's public. So as long as you know my public key and I keep my private key secret, all of this works. And if you can see my public key, that won't tell me anything about my private key. The way this works, anyone remember maths? Good, thank you. This one is about the oldest problem known in mathematics. If you have a really, really, really big integer, prime factorization of that really, really big integer takes a very long time. And when I say really big, 100 digits or more, because you've got to enumerate numbers. You've got to start counting. So it is incredibly tediously slow. And so the way you do it is you do a prime number and another prime number, both big, and multiply them together. So now this large composite number has only one set of prime factors, P and Q, and they're really big numbers. You're probably not going to get it. Now, the other thing is, if I raise something to the power, 2 to the power 4, and I raise it to another power, 2 to the power 4 to the power 3, it's commutative. So 2 to the power 4 to the power 3 equals 2 to the power 3 to the power 4. Woohoo! This is actually what's going on inside this kind of cryptography. Because that prime number relationship and the fact that raising things to a power is actually commutative, it doesn't matter which order you do it, is the basis for the security of the entire internet. If any dickhead makes those bloody quantum computers work, we're stuffed. Because this relies on the fact that I cannot do factorization of a large composite number in anything under extraordinarily long time. So if you crack that problem, go and take the world to ransom, because quite frankly, we're defenseless. So how does all this work? When I actually open up my session with Akamai, bastards, Akamai does some back-end work and it sends me something. And what it sends me is a certificate, and I come back with a session key encoded using the bank's public key. So there's a certificate that I get given, and inside that certificate is a public key value. I then produce a session key using the public key. At the other end, Akamai or the Commonwealth Bank, I'm not sure which, use their private key to decrypt that, and all of a sudden, we're finished. We're in an encrypted session that only the bank and I know about. This is cool, I think. So I got handed a certificate. Yep. What certificate? Because it better be bloody valid, because otherwise I really, really am getting hoodwinked. Well, when you click on that little lock icon on your browser, it will tell you all wonderful things, and down the bottom, it tells me that the key is generated using prime number cryptography, and the composite number is of the order of 2048 bits long. It's a bloody big number. Factoring that into its prime numbers will take you a very, very long time. So that's the number. Why should I trust it? Because my browser reckons that's a good certificate. I'm like, I don't know. I have no bloody idea when I look at that ASCII barf, exactly what this is or not. It has no sense to me. If it makes sense to you, good on you. But how did my browser know? Well, I didn't see them do this, and they won't let me see them do this, but this is what I reckon happened. The Commonwealth Bank of Australia sat on some machine and said, generate a key pair. Fine. And then they found someone called Symantec, and they said, give me a certificate. And Symantec said, we'll do that if you pay us money. The Commonwealth Bank said, well, I'm a bank, here's some money. And off they go, they got this certificate. Now, that's recorded. And in essence, what's going on is Symantec reckon that the folk who paid the money are the folk who own that domain name, www.combank.com.au. How do they know that? I don't bloody know. I suspect that in some cases, anyone who pays the money can get away with it, and we'll see what happens. So basically what's going on is if I trust all that, then the certificate I get presented with is a certificate written by Symantec saying that that domain name and a private key are tied together. And as long as I'm prepared to trust that, I'm good. It's my bank. Why should I? Why should I trust that certificate? Well, here's a list of people my browser trusts. And listed there at about position number 30 is Symantec, yep? So my browser trusts Symantec all of the time. Everything it does, if it produces a certificate, my browser and your browser says, wacko, that's really cool. I trust it. Everything it does, that's really cool. You know, that's a really big list. And at some point, I reckon my browser has gone into credulity, just absolutely naively trusting. Because when you look at a few blogs, and this one is really good, this is our dear friends, the Chinese government, CNNIC. And my browser trusts them. CNNIC went and produced a certificate for star.google.com. And it was used in Egypt in a man-in-the-middle attack to try and find folks' passwords when they accessed Gmail. If you actually are running Chrome and you pull out the same list, you'll find that Chrome does not trust the Chinese government, and that's probably a good thing. But you know, I'm credulous. I am insanely stupid. The browser I used trusts folk who lie. Oh, it's only a one-off. Bullshit. The next one down are our dear friends Komodo. Our dear friends Komodo got hacked. Because how do you provide services these days? Online. What does online mean? I put some Unix box out the front. Oops. Because they get hacked. And this one got hacked. They produced star.google.com. It was used in Iran to find people's passwords and basically do a man-in-the-middle attack of Iranian citizens, yes? So, you know, the list of folk that my browser trusts is a pretty crappy list. But my bank used Symantec. And Symantec never lie, do they? They are a really good bunch of folk, know them well, wonderful people, never ever lie. Well, hardly ever. This came up yesterday, day before. They issued a certificate for example.com. And they didn't notice for 6 months. My bank uses this to these guys. My bank is basically saying they never lie. Bullshit. Everyone has a problem with this kind of system. All of them have weaknesses. And the real consequences are absolutely ugly. Because once you start cracking around with security on the internet, folk are extremely exposed. Because there are intercepting machines in the middle of the wire almost everywhere. Even on Wi-Fi networks, as you're probably aware, it is insanely easy. So this stuff happens, and it's really horrible, and this is what keeps the internet together. This is what keeps your bank providing service. It's bullshit. So what's going wrong? What's going wrong is when the certificate gets passed to my browser saying, trust this, it doesn't say who should have issued that certificate. So my browser will go, is there any trusted certificate authority in my list of 1,600 people that I've never met who is prepared to say that's my certificate I issued? If any one of those says yes, I'm going to trust this stuff. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10 in awesomely bad, you know, that hits a solid 20. Because this is amazing. You know, here's a lock on my front door. It's a great lock, looks terrific, any key can open it. Just present a bit of metal at it and slide it and it will bloody open. Because it doesn't know which key should open it. That is precisely the security system you're running with. Prime number factorization, great idea. But figuring out which prime number pair you really should trust, we haven't got this worked out. So what you've got today underneath the entirety of the internet is a paper-thin veneer of security that anybody with half a brain cell and a decent hacking ability can punch a hole through. And that is almost all of the security systems we rely on. If certificates pass hands, you have no idea which one you should be trusting. So my bank probably paid Symantec lots of money, presumably thousands of dollars. Yeah? Why? Because any CA can mint a certificate for www.combank.com.au, so they might as well have paid someone $2 rather than $2,000 because anybody could have issued that certificate. So oddly enough, the entire system is only as good as the shittiest provider out there. And of the 1,600 that exist in my browser, some of them shouldn't. Some of them really, really shouldn't. So what's going on is you're only as strong as the weakest link, and the weakest link is really crappy. And that's what keeps your bank as your bank. Feeling worried yet? Everything relies on this. And I suppose the real issue is that when we started mucking around with certificates, we started to think that these folks should be solid, resilient, reliable, trustworthy. But what it ended up being was a marketplace. And in all marketplaces, cheap wins. Because why pay more? Because it's the same deal. You don't get additional security if you pay them lots of money. It's the same certificate infrastructure. It makes no bloody difference. So cheap wins. So what are we going to do about it? If cheap is shoddy, let's make it even cheaper. Seriously, these guys are doing this stuff now for free. Now, they're only valid for 90 days, and I don't know about you, but it takes me a lot of time to cause mayhem, and 90-day certificates are useless, right? Wrong. So yes, as long as you've got control of a web page, you can get one of these certificates, and they're as good as any other. So basically, if you take all the money out, will it make the system any better, or will it make it awesomely bad? Awesomely bad is certainly out there as a possibility, and we are going to find out because they're minting certificates like they're going out of style. So the fact that you get a little browser bar that goes green doesn't mean they're nice guys. It just means they've paid Let's Encrypt nothing. Go for it. Google claim they're better than this though. So Google have a piece of code, and there's a bit of the piece of code that says, we're going to protect users who use Chrome. And we're going to put inside the browser a list of domain names and the particular certificate authority that you should use to validate the certificate that gets passed in it. So when I go to Komodo and say, star.google.com, and Komodo go, absolutely, Geoff, of course, and I use Chrome, Chrome goes, no, not Komodo, thank you. Our CA is somewhere else. Awesomely good, right? How many domain names out there? A couple of billion. And I'd love to see Chrome try and put the lot inside their browser as a list, right? I'm like, it's awesomely clever, but insanely unscalable. So Google kind of go, yes, I'm protected, and nobody else, which is kind of a bit unfair, really. So, not completely insane, but does not scale. There is always a third answer. There is always a third answer. This is a t-shirt that some of us put out a while ago because they're kind of pissed off with the fact that everyone tries to perfect things, whereas the realistic answer is if you've got a problem, the DNS is the answer. And it doesn't matter what your problem is, the DNS is obviously the answer. Running code, stuff that, just put it in the DNS and it'll kind of work. So if my real problem is how to find the public key associated with the domain name, why the hell don't I ask the DNS for the public key associated with the domain name? If I'm willing to trust the IP address, thank you, Akamai, I should be also willing to trust the public key that comes along with it just by asking the DNS, yes? So let's do this. Why don't you put inside the DNS the CA that issued the certificate for you? So you just go and ask it. Who issued that certificate? Who should have? If anyone else has issued it, don't trust it. But why stop there? Why don't I just go, just tell me the issuer CA, go a little bit back. Who issued that certificate? Why don't I say only trust this certificate? So just hash the cert and put it in the DNS, because the DNS is awesome. It can store that kind of stuff. But realistically, what I'm really trying to do in security is find the public key of the domain name I'm going to and use that to create a session key. So why don't I just ask the DNS for the public key? I'm like, if that's the information I'm after, go ask the DNS. And it's kind of, why did CommBank pay Symantec all those thousands of dollars when I could have just asked the DNS for its public key and got the right answer straight out? Who needs CAs? And the CA business is truly prodigious. One of the cheaper ones on the market, GoDaddy, I can get a domain for $11 a year, but certificates, no. Certificates are some kind of voodoo crap. I'm going to charge you $75 a year for a certificate that anyone else could have minted as well. This is an awesome business. I wish I was a CA. I really want to be one. There's just so much money, and they're just banking on everyone else, including me, being not just credulous, but insanely stupid, because that's what we are. So we can do better. We can put keys in the DNS. RFC 6698, go and read it. And after you've read that, go and read this one as well, because we made a few errors in the first one, so this one kind of fixes up all that shit and makes it all that much better. But the whole idea is, whack it in the DNS, and we know what we're doing. And so we use a particular kind of record called a TLSA record. TLSA, authority, I think. And you can put a certificate cert hash in there, you can put your entity certificate, you can put a trust anchor. The DNS will take almost anything and do the right stuff. So here's a bit of OpenSSL, that'll generate a TLSA record. Go look at the slides, it's really cool. If you want your public key, go and look at the slides, that's really cool too, it's really easy. So now what goes on is once I get this key in my TLS exchange, I can then go and check with the DNS. So I get given a public key and I go, DNS, should I believe this key? I look up a TLSA record and go yes or no. Really, really hard for someone to prove they're the Commonwealth Bank unless they own the Commonwealth Bank's domain name. But if you own my domain name, you're me. I'm sorry, that's it. So if someone manages to take over the entire domain of combank.com.au, they are the bank, like it or not. So all of this is really cool, except the DNS is not. Because as we all know, and China proves daily, you can lie like crazy in the DNS. All I've got to do is answer first and you will believe me. No matter what the answer is, you will believe me. Because the DNS is full of liars. Most of them are called state actors, but they are full of liars. So even if you put this stuff in the DNS, if I can lie about it, we're no better off. So what do you need to do? You need to secure the DNS. You really, really, really do. And what you don't need is 1,600 potential trust anchors, because that's insane. That's completely insane. You need one. And you need to trust them. So they need to be good, but you only need one. And that's the model of DNSSEC. Names are hierarchical, trust is hierarchical. When you have something like www.example.com, don't trust Symantec because they're lying bastards and the certificate you get is bullshit. The way that you know it's really example.com is through interlocking keys, because what essentially happens is example.com is signed over with the keys of com, which is signed over by the keys of the root. So if all you have is one thing, which is the key of the root, you can figure out whether what the DNS is telling you is a lie or real. Because if you go backwards, you can test each of those things with their associated digital signature going, is what I got told genuine? Is that what the original owner of that domain zone put in the DNS? Because there's a digital signature attached with it, and if the signature authenticates, the answer is good. So you just do the backward chaining. Now, as long as you have a valid local trust anchor, the root key, you're happy. It's really simple. So the two combined are brilliant, because I can query the DNS for the TLSA record, and then I use DNSSEC to check that it really is the right record. Once I do that check, it's my bank, or some nasty bastard who's taken over their entire website and all the rest of their credentials, in which case all of us who are customers of the bank are stuffed. But unless that's going on, it really is my bank. It's them and I'm me, and we've actually got a decent, secure, encrypted session. So who does this? There are browser extensions, and one of the best ones around right now is done by the folk who, CZ, the Czech Nick, who have put out a validator that works in most of the browsers. And I did it on one of my domain names, and yes, the little lock turns green, and that's really cool. It's not hard to do. So the real key thing is, all of this is possible as long as we all do DNSSEC. And so the real question is, if no one does DNSSEC, then a bit like IPv6, you might be wasting your time. Everyone has got to do validation. Around 16% of the world validates, which is an awesomely big number. It's been sort of slowly growing over the last few years. But if you actually have a look at the map of the world, there's little hotspots of DNSSEC validation, including, blow me, the bottom end of the South Pacific. Half of the users in this country validate. Holy shit. I might, compared to Australia, which is what you guys seem to do, we are indeed banging the rocks together over in the Western Islands. Just haven't got a clue. So who actually managed to do this right? By using the awesome power of Google Ads, we can reach deep inside many countries, and your country is no different to any other, and we can look deep inside your country and actually find which particular providers have done this. Spark have turned on DNSSEC validation in the resolver they use facing their customers. So 95% of the customers of Spark, AS4771, always validate the answer. So the answer they get back from their resolvers, you can believe. Vodafone, no. Call Plus, 1 in 7. The users are doing it for themselves. Telstra Clear, 1 in 4. Users are doing it for themselves. Trustpower, who's Trustpower? Well, they're clueful people because they're doing validation. Good bloody on them. So you can have a look too. There are a few folk who've actually turned it on. What does it take to turn it on? One line. DNSSEC validation equals yes. If that's too hard for you, go look up the documentation. You know, that's all it takes, and it does make it a whole lot easier for the rest of us. Now, does your browser do this automatically? No. Because there's a bit of a concern out there that the browser guys have a remarkably cynical view of you as customers. They think that what you want is awesomely fast and astonishingly insecure. That's what they believe you want. And so because this kind of additional validation takes cycles, no browser vendor, Chrome or anyone else, is actually willing to go that one extra step and bring this into reality, which really sucks. So what do you want? Well, we can make it better and faster, because out there right now is a set of standards coming up that say don't bother looking at the DNS. When I present you with that TLS certificate, I'll also present you with a bundle of DNSSEC answers that you would have got if you looked up the DNS. Why would you believe me? Don't trust me. Use the trust key of the DNS to validate this other piece of information. So now what goes on is that inside the one cycle, I've got everything I need to make sure that the public key I'm given is the public key that was put there by the owner of the website. Who's doing this? Mozilla in November last year committed that they would put this into Firefox. What's Chrome doing? Well, it's the usual secret from Google. I'd hope that they're looking at this and getting a clue, because you can do it really, really easily and quickly. And in this case, it's no slower than the shit you're using today. And it actually makes things like banking a whole lot better, because Symantec, even if they stuff up and issue a certificate for the Bank of New Zealand when they shouldn't have, your browser, if it had this, would be able to tell the lie from the truth and not go there. So, you know, oddly enough, we could do a whole lot better job and make the security system a whole lot better than it is now. We can actually get robust, affordable, and really accessible security. What does it take? It takes DNSSEC. So if you've got customers and you're doing DNS resolving for them, for Christ's sake, turn it on. If Spark can do it, you can do it too. It can't be that hard. And if you actually publish, sorry, maybe not. If you actually publish names, if you're a registrar, you should encourage your folk to actually DNSSEC sign their names. You should make it standard practice. And realistically, you should also push them a little bit and show them just how awesomely easy it is to, as well as doing DNSSEC and signing their zone, they use one of these two commands and whack a TLSA record in their zone. And so if the browser is doing the checking, the user that does that browser checking cannot and will not get fooled by a fake certificate. Either that, or you simply believe, like the rest of them, that fake certificates never exist and no one ever lies in the internet. Ever. In which case you'd be as stupid as I am. So I think that was the end of the slides. Oh, sorry, one more. If you really wanted to figure out how to do it, it took me an afternoon to do my zone. And so I wrote it up because it was kind of only an afternoon's work. And so this is using Let's Encrypt certificates, which are awesomely cheap, but tying it together with the TLSA record, which I think compensates for the weaknesses in Let's Encrypt. Who knows? If you can do a better job of stealing my domain from me, go figure, and we'll write another article about it. Thank you. I'm glad I didn't. Sorry, yeah.
There we go. Playing devil's advocate, if your bank is using a CDN as the front end, and what you can validate is the front end CDN, what's causing you to trust everything behind that it actually is going to your bank infrastructure and not something else from that CDN?
Well, you know, I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea if Commonwealth Bank has sold all of its online assets to Akamai or someone hosted on Akamai, including their keys. And they could have done that, and I'd be none the wiser, right? So my suspicion is that Akamai is a front-end DDoS absorber, and what they're doing is taking all of the initial TCP sends and TLS handshakes, but at the moment they get to actually accessing the private key to set up the session key, they go back to the Commonwealth Bank in a simple transaction saying, authenticate the offered session key with your private key, and then Akamai do a bunch more. When you get to, these are my accounts, these are your balances, I would hope.
And
I
that's
have
my point.
no
You would
bloody
hope
idea. I would
that's
hope
what's happening.
They're referring to a back end. This is completely opaque to me, the user, and you can kind of go, well, Geoff, yeah, right. But at some point, it gets beyond stuff I can trust. It just gets beyond it. And so all I can say is the DNS told me to go somewhere. The certificate told me to use keys. The trusted DNSSEC validated, said that that certificate is good. That's as much as I can do. After that, take my money. Cool. Thank you.
Excellent.